Hey, everybody. Thank you for watching. We're back with another mock draft. I guess these are launching on Thursday, so we'll call it Mock Draft Thursday for this week and next week, and then that's it. With me, my guest for this one, there's a specific reason that we picked this guest to be on this show. It's Paul Perdichizzi. Hello, Paul.
Christopher, thank you for having me back.
Of course. Thanks for coming on and showing us your beautiful mug. The reason that Paul's on for this one, this is a startup Dynasty mock draft. And the reason Paul is here is because he is a key factor, one would say, the proprietor of SaturdayToSunday.com, the number 2, SaturdayToSunday.com. There are lots of big times of year for Saturday to Sunday because they're constantly putting out material on the guys who play on Saturday and will eventually play on Sunday because Paul watches a hell of a lot of college football. This is a particularly key time right now because he's already thinking about 2024. He put out his first set of notebooks about the 2024 prospects just this week. So if you're interested at all in Paul, and you will be after this because he really knows his stuff, go to SaturdayToSunday.com and check it out. So when I asked you to do this, Paul, when I asked you to come do a Dynasty startup mock draft, 14 rounds, no kickers, no defenses, half point per reception, what was your reaction?
Yeah, it was kind of exciting. I feel like I haven't done a startup, any type of startup draft in quite some time. I think it's an interesting challenge to kind of try to, balance the act of the young guys, the veterans, the guys on the back end of their careers and tie it into the new rookie class. Obviously a lot of rookie drafts I took part in over the last, couple months or so. But a startup Dynasty draft is very interesting to kind of see. There's a lot of ways and perspectives in terms of draft philosophy that somebody could have.
Right. So for this one, as opposed to the previous 3, we've done it on Fantrax. This one we're doing on Sleeper just because it handles the Dynasty aspect of it better. And we realize that when you do mocks with 10 bots on Sleeper, wow, do the picks go fast. So we're going to slow it down when it's X so that everybody watching can kind of catch up. And frankly, so that we can catch up because we're doing this live to tape and you guys all will see us fumble and try to figure out who's taken and who's not taken in the after the first couple of rounds. It'll be a little bit of a struggle. Bear with us. It's fine. So I think we're ready. And producer Dave is with us. Every so often we might ask Dave to pause. But Dave, if you want to launch it, I'm picking 4. Paul's picking 10. Because I'm a bad host, and so I gave myself a higher pick. So here we go. Let's see what Sleeper thinks the bots think they should do on the first 3 picks. We saw Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and I have to say I'm very surprised to see Christian McCaffrey go number 3 in a startup Dynasty draft. Although you want to win this year, and he's a very, very good pick and a half point per reception. What's your perception of McCaffrey going 3 overall?
Yeah, he wouldn't be the guy that I would think in the Dynasty format. While he might produce the best running back numbers this year, I do think we could stretch it out for at least a 2-3 year window. I would have pivoted to another running back. I was a little surprised. I think McCaffrey, I thought, would have been maybe in that 5, 6 range, 7, not up there at 3.
So I'm at 4, and I have Bijan. I think you're talking about Bijan Robinson, and I have him falling in my lap. And I've spent this redraft season being pretty suspicious of Bijan Robinson as a first round pick because obviously you only care about this year and there are lots of questions. Is he really, really that good? Is he, going to be ahead of Tyler Algier by enough? There are questions for 2023. There seem to be fewer questions about 2024. I'm not going to make you tell me what to do here in the startup Dynasty, but I have to say it's very common for me to go young quarterback in the first round. What's your feeling in general if Pat Mahomes is sitting there and somebody takes him at 4? Do you go, what?
Yeah, I think in a 1 quarterback league, I would be a little surprised. I mean, I understand the longevity you are getting with the quarterback,
right,
in this type of Dynasty setting. But I do think there's enough top-end quarterbacks, and I think even after the first 3 or 4, there's still some really intriguing ones in that next tier. So it wouldn't be something that I would do in a 1 quarterback league, but I do understand why somebody might want to go that way.
And in fact, Team 5, the bot right behind me, decided to go that way. So I took Bijan at 4. Therefore, I now can go hook him. I now can give the horns because I did go to grad school one of the times at Texas, and I can not be a hater. I can come across as not a hater of Bijan. It's very nice. So after that, We had CD Lamb, young receiver Garrett Wilson, young receiver Josh Allen, quarterback. And then Jalen Waddle. What's your reaction to having seen two quarterbacks go off in front of you and only two running backs go off in front of you?
Yeah, not surprised about the running backs so much because I do think there's a lot of uncertainty, even at the top in Dynasty, with the situation with Jonathan Taylor, where he might end up, and the, even young guys now were concerned about like how quickly somebody else might be drafted to kind of share the load with them, aka the Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet situation. So I think this is the wide receiver heavy. It makes a little bit more sense, I think, sometimes in startup dynasties. People want to feel like that their first round pick, can at least be a guy that they know they can count on for X amount of years, however somebody's looking. So I'm not surprised by that. Like I mentioned before, I am surprised about two quarterbacks in a one quarterback setting. But obviously when you're locking in Mahomes and Josh Allen, you're feeling confident that you're getting a top 5 or top 3 quarterback play for a long duration in a dynasty league. So I do think it makes some sense.
All right, so you're up. You probably sounds like you're leaning towards another wide receiver, and you in fact were. You took A.J. Brown. Not too much needs to be said about A.J. Brown. Last year, if we were doing this draft, he wouldn't have gone there, but he escaped his wide receiver hell and landed in wide receiver heaven, and he's all right. Then you did see Jonathan Taylor and his uncertainty, and you saw Breece Hall. What do you feel like? I remember how much you liked Breece Hall as a prospect, and then I finally got to see him, and I liked him a lot. Well, after that first month, the first month wasn't so good, but before he got hurt last year, he was awfully, awfully good. The knee issue knocks him, for me, in redraft leagues, way out of my range. I'm not spending a 3rd or 4th round redraft guy on this year's J.K. Dobbins, on the knee worry. But I think probably it's just fine for him to go near the turn in a startup dynasty.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, whether it's the injury and or, the Dalvin Cook, I'm right there with you on redraft. I'm concerned. I think he's more of a 5th, 6th round pick now in redraft. Yeah. But I think in the dynasty setting like this, I think all the running backs come with some level of uncertainty after we talk about like, okay, we know Christian McCaffrey's got a little bit. Bijan Robinson's the one with the least, I think, but we still got to see him play at the next level. Yeah. So I think the Hall, I just think, for me, I would want to feel a little bit safer about my early 2nd round pick, that I'm getting a high level of production from him in year 1. And I don't think you're really getting that. And if they go out and invest another decent pick next year or whatever in another running back to share the workload, I think it kind of then makes it look like, okay, maybe it was a little bit too high of an investment. I'm just going to lead right into my pick. I'm taking Saquon Barkley.
Wow.
I think he's still got a couple high ends, really strong years left. I think he's going to end up staying in New York, especially if the Giants offense, it looks a little bit better this year. So I'm going to go with Saquon Barkley. I think he still has that top 5 running back upside. And I still think he's young enough that I'm not worried about like it falling off a cliff after 1 year. I think I feel pretty good about him still being a rather elite running back for at least 2-3 years.
So this is, would people who do dynasty ranks for a living, which I don't do them for a living, I much more do redraft ranks for a living, I would still have Saquon Barkley ahead of Breece Hall, even though I know Saquon Barkley's been in the league 5 years, whatever it is, and has more tread taken off of his tires. But I've just seen it, and he hasn't torn his ACL. I don't think that's a consensus opinion, though.
No, I think you're right. Like for my rankings, he's number 4 in my running back rankings, and I do have him ahead of Breece Hall. I have Breece Hall at number 5. The guys that I had ahead of Saquon all went. It was Bijan, it was Jonathan Taylor, it was Christian McCaffrey, and then I had Saquon at 4. So for me, that was an easy pick because I have him where I have him. But I do think you're right. I think more people skew a little bit towards the younger. I've really changed my philosophy. I've been playing Dynasty for a long time, and I used to be thinking real far out. Then I cut it down, and now I'm cut it down even more. And especially at the running back position, I just think besides quarterbacks and some wide receivers, but even the wide receivers change more than we think. I think you just got to be looking in like 2-year windows for the running backs, and that's why I'm willing to say, okay, give me this year Saquon, give me next year Saquon. This year I'm not really thinking Breece Hall is going to be elite, so I that's what pushed me to have Saquon still slightly ahead of Breece Hall. It was one pick. Breece Hall was my number 5 back in terms of my rankings.
But you're singing my tune. I mean, I think youth gets the fetishizing of youth is we're getting older, so we're very anti fetishizing of youth. But no, 100%. That's where I am too. But where I am now, having seen 3 more receivers go off, and 2 of them being, Olave broke my heart. That's who I would have taken had he made it there. There's the young, pure stud wide receivers are gone. There aren't, and there are a couple of really good receivers. Devontae Adams is staring at me, and I think he's probably going to be good for a few more years. Stephon Diggs is staring at me. He's going to be good for a couple more years. I'll tell you what, I know that I'm not going to take him, but let's save it for a second. I'm going to ask you to give me a rookie take in just a second, but
sure.
I'll do Diggs. And then let's see if who I think goes next. We saw you can pause it here, Dave. So we've made it through 2 rounds, and the guy I wanted to ask you about in a second is Jahmyr Gibbs, because he was the highest recommended on the board, and I wasn't going to take him there. But actually, let's say thank you to the sponsor, because without AG1, we wouldn't be doing these mock drafts. AG1, this is my overflow supply, Paul. This one hasn't been opened yet. This is the one I'm drinking out of every morning, but I drink AG1 every single morning. I mix it in water. It's a super easy, like a micro habit that your stomach feels a little better. You get a fuller range of nutrients than you would with like multivitamins. It comes with a probiotic in it, which both helps your regularity a little bit, and also just make sure that the vitamins are much more likely to wind up in your system as opposed to passing through you. I go to the gym a lot, and I notice a huge difference in my energy level when I drink AG1. I really recommend that people check it out. It's $3 a day, which is not nothing, but it's a good habit. And if it makes you feel better, then it really is worth it. Plus, we can get you a pretty good deal where you get a year's supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs. If you go to drinkag1.com/Harris, add the /Harris. That gives us a little bit of credit. And we really do thank AG1 for sponsoring these drafts all month long. We wouldn't be able to do it without them. And I would love it if you'd check them out. So the thing I was going to ask you is Jahmyr Gibbs. Can you give me a quick evaluation on Gibbs this year? There's lots of reasons to be suspicious because of the setup, because of Dave Montgomery, because of not knowing. But as a prospect, do you love him?
Yeah, so Jahmyr Gibbs, the guy I always went back to was earlier career Austin Eckler, not the guy who is taken over as a very workhorse type back, maybe because the Chargers can't seem to find a secondary piece to go with him. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is best in a role of what I think that ideally the Chargers would want, Austin Eckler to have been over the X amount of years. I think his frame, his play style, very similar. I think he's going to be a guy that's going to be, especially in PPR leagues or even half PPR, I think you're going to see a guy who's going to produce RB1 numbers. I just think it's a little bit still up in the air just how high level his running production is. And that's the one thing that, like, I've seen him 5, 6 in RB Dynasty, rankings overall. And I just wasn't, when I do mine, I wasn't able to pull the trigger to get him that high. Now, I still have him in my top 10. He's at number 9, so he's still high up on my rankings, but I couldn't pull the trigger over guys like Saquon and a couple other guys that I'm sure will be coming up, pretty soon as well. So I had him a little bit towards the back end of my top 10, where other people probably have him towards that like 5 to 7 range, I think.
So you're not offended by where he goes here, because he goes the last pick of the second round. If people are into Gibbs, they like what you just said about him, and you're picking near that second, third round turn, that's an okay spot for him, just not any earlier than that.
Yeah, I would have only taken, there's only one other running back I have that I would have taken ahead of him. And again, I think that's more of my preference on how I play Dynasty, less than the community. So there's one guy that I have ahead of him, and we'll see.
I really hope he lasts. There's one more pick to go. I really hope he lasts, because I know who you're talking about. So, what do we? I don't want to obsess over Gibbs, but I do. I just feel like you're such a good resource for the rookies because you've spent so much time thinking about them. The Kamara comparison, I've heard it so many times. It doesn't feel like you really buy it.
No, I think I understand why people say it in terms of what I think early career Kamara usage was, but the frames are very different. Alvin Kamara was like 215, or so. He had great contact balance. Like he could run tough inside runs and bounce off guys. I don't think that's Jahmyr Gibbs' game. Alabama didn't even use him like that last year.
Yeah.
So that's why I get why. And I think they're kind of thinking about the Austin Eckler usage. And I don't know why that just wasn't the natural comparison, because Eckler's like 10, 15 pounds less than Kamara. That's right up, Jahmyr Gibbs' wheelhouse. To me, that's the way better comp. And obviously, if he was Austin Eckler, everyone would sign up for that. He'd be going right after Bijan. So we don't know he's going to reach that level, but I think the size, frame, athleticism, and ideal usage is more Eckler than it is Kamara.
All right, producer Dave Pyper, you can find out if my heart gets broken or not here in the first pick of the. No, my heart did not get broken. Travis Etienne and Devontae Smith both. I know that Travis Etienne was not the running back that Paul was talking about. I believe it was probably this guy. Was I correct about that?
You were correct.
Nick Chubb. So, I mean, the reason that Nick Chubb can see his stock fall a little bit in Dynasty is that, he's been worked a lot in his career, and he doesn't have a good 5-year window ahead of him. We know it. But I think Paul just said it right, which is, in a startup, I'd like to win this year. It's a great philosophy to win, the 2027 title, but it's not fantasy baseball. It's simply not, you can't plan. Guys are in the minor leagues for 3 years learning how to play. They come into the league as full-grown men. The best chance you have to win, the most about the league is right now and this year. So I'm very, very happy to have Nick Chubb. After me go 2 more quarterbacks, only one other wide receiver, and it was Jackson Smith-Njigba, who is the highest rookie drafted wide receiver this year in a down year for wide receivers, and then a couple more running backs as well. So what do you feel? You've gone to major studs for years to come, I think, in A.J. Brown and Saquon Barkley. What looks good to you on the board at this point?
Yeah, so to me, I'm really wrestling with 2 guys here, and one is a little bit, the end of the wide receivers, which I think are like guys who are going to still be elite, and then to me, there's another running back that really intrigues me that I do think has a little bit more youth on his side, than maybe like a guy like Nick Chubb, and that's where I'm going to lean with this pick, because I've been a big fan of Tony Pollard for a long time, and now I want to be in on the year that I think he's finally going to get to prove to be, an elite level back. And I think whether it sets him up in Dallas or somewhere else, I think he's about to have a 2-3 year window where he's a clear RB1, especially in half-point PPR leagues as well. So that's where I'm going with this pick. It was close though, because I'm kind of surprised that Devontae Adams is still there, to be honest with you. So that made me pause a little bit. But I'm gonna stick with Tony Pollard here.
And Devontae Adams goes the pick right after you, so your heart gets cracked just a little bit, but you got the running back you wanted. And it comes back around, and you've done the inverse of what everybody's been telling everybody to do this year. Hero running back, and then 6 receivers in a row in redraft, which I don't really believe in that, but that's the opposite of what you've done. You did hero wide receiver, and then 2, what are you doing? Those guys aren't 21. How could you take those running backs? What are you thinking in the 4th round here?
Yeah, so I think now we start to get to, listen, since he's came out, I've been waiting for Kyle Pitts to have this breakout. But it's hard for me to invest this high in a guy like him just because we just haven't seen it yet. It's 100% just kind of hoping. And I still think there's some value to be had, at other tight end positions. So I think where I'm leaning right now is to get a guy who I think could make that next step at the quarterback position and rise up to that top 5 level. And that's Justin Fields for me, because he's a guy that I loved coming out of college. I think that first year in Chicago and even last year, they didn't really set him up with the right play call to maximize his skill set. We saw glimpses and pieces of it. I think we're going to see another step this year. I'm not really all in on redraft. Like, people think he's going to be Jalen Hurts this year from last year, and I'm not ready to go there yet. I think the Bears still got some developing around him before we see that maybe Jalen Hurts like jump from last year. But I think the upside and the ceiling is high. And this is a guy I loved coming out of college. I liked what I saw him starting to develop last year. And I think the sky's still, the upward mobility to maybe, find that next level and even go to the higher tier of quarterbacks.
So QB wise, we in the first 4+ rounds, 4.5 rounds, we've seen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of the 12 teams go QB, and taken a lot of the young high upside guys are gone. I certainly kind of could have considered Burrow. He went right after me in the second round, but yeah, I felt like in a single QB league, you've been saying it all draft, I didn't really need to do that. We both went 2 running backs in the first 3. My tendency here is to go wide receiver, and it's funny because the name that Sleeper on their default Dynasty list would recommend next, I don't know if folks can see it, but it's Deebo Samuel. He's not old. I'm still not taking him. And it's a longevity question. It's a player style question. In a Dynasty, Deebo scares me a lot more than he scares me in a redraft. It's just like it's a trade-off between either you give him the touches that he needs to be awesome for Dynasty and get beaten up to within an inch of his life, or you take the throttle off and you keep him healthy by not giving him lots of handoffs, by not, having those crazy crackback routes where he could get just slaughtered. And great, he's healthy and I don't get any fantasy production out of him. So that's not my choice. I'm not taking Quentin Johnston, although when he goes, I want your opinion on him. I've already talked to you about him on the podcast. I know kind of what you think. I think Christian Watson is the right guy, and so I will go Christian Watson. So there goes Jordan Addison, there goes Deebo Samuel, and I guess we saw Addison go right after me. He goes before Quentin Johnston does. And we saw Quentin Johnston go too. So we'll take them one at a time, but they both just went, so let's talk about both of them. If folks are considering Addison or Johnston in like this late 4th, early 5th, in a Dynasty startup where they've done absolutely nothing, and really established players like Jerry Jeudy and DJ Moore are on the board, how are you feeling about those picks?
Yeah, for me, that's way too high. I have roughly 9 wide receivers before I had the 3 from this year in a row in my Dynasty wide receiver ranks: Addison, Zay Flowers, and Quentin Johnson. So we're talking 9 guys in between there that have not went yet, unless Deebo went there right there and I missed it. But there's like a stretch there of guys that I would prefer over them, because my one question about these guys is I'm not sure they have a higher ceiling than like a low wide receiver too. I'm not sure any of the guys taken in this year's rookie class, besides Jackson Smith and the Jigba, who's already been off the board, and I think he could have a role like Cooper Kupp, maybe not the ungodly numbers, but I think he could be a focal point of an offense like Cooper Kupp was. I don't see that for Jordan Addison. I don't see it for Zay Flowers. And I have a lot of questions about Quentin Johnston in terms of his route refinement. He doesn't always play up to his size and athleticism. So for me, those guys, I think this is a little bit high. It's probably what's out there, though, in the consensus in terms of rankings, because I just think that the new shiny toy always gets pushed up the board a little bit. But I have my question marks on, like, there's a lot of guys there's more guys from last year's rookie class. I know you took Christian Watson, but there's other guys in last year's wide receiver class that I'm more intrigued with than I am Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers, Quentin Johnson.
Yeah, your Quentin Johnston review of him around draft time when you were on the podcast back in April stuck with me, because I don't really watch college football. I saw the two TCU games. I saw the 2 semifinal and the finals, and both times I was like, that guy looks big. He just doesn't seem like he's like running over guys or playing super big. And then you came on with a full career's worth of scouting material on him, and I just stuck with me. Like, I don't think I like that guy. I don't think I'm into that guy. So we did see Miles Sanders and Javonte Williams go. I think if I were truly you might need to pause it here as I pontificate, Dave. If I were truly a dynasty head, I would probably be outraged that Anthony Richardson is sitting here, a league winner for the next 7 years. This just in, I'm not going to take Anthony Richardson, and I don't think you are either. So while I figure out who I'm going to pick, tell me if you think I'm making a mistake on not taking him at the top of the 5th.
No, I listen. I'm an Anthony Richardson guy. I like him. He'd be in the mix with the 1 or 2 guys that would be next on my quarterback length. So I do think he should come off the board sooner rather than later. But I still think there's some guys that, I'd feel a little bit, better with at the other positions besides the quarterback position. I think if you were going to make a quarterback pick, I'd understand it being Anthony Richardson. It might be one or two other guys that I could understand being in the conversation because I do like the upside. I just think sometimes, sometimes we need to see a little bit. And I think Richardson's going to be a good player, but there's a lot of development needed, and that team has got a lot of question marks around it. They might be getting rid of their star running back. So for me, like, I think it could be a bumpy ride for the first couple years there, even if he has some good fantasy weeks because of his running and athleticism capabilities. So I don't think it's crazy to pass on him, but I do think he should be one of the next quarterbacks that comes off the board.
All right, so I'm not going to take him. Dave, you can unpause it. I know who I'm taking. And we have the little badass, DJ Moore. Not a young player, not an old player. Very, very good player. I like the mix. I like the mix here. I mean, I have Bijan, and then I have, by Dynasty standards, ancient mofos. I guess Christian Watson's not, but my God, I've got like 3 guys over 26 years old. Oh, God. I mean, Chubb might not be. I don't know. They're old. All right, so we didn't see Richardson go yet. Interesting. We didn't see any other quarterbacks go since my last pick. We saw Dobbins, Swift, Mixon. Jerry Jeudy was certainly in the mix as I was considering DJ Moore. I wish I liked him more because he fits the profile of the right kind of guy. He's been in the league. We kind of know what he is. For me, that's kind of the problem. I've seen him enough to go, I'm not sure he's great. And then McLaurin, I also certainly considered here. They're both off the board. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, so there's one more wide receiver that I kind of had really tightly mixed in there with Jerry Jeudy and Terry McLaurin. And I'm going to go with him. I've always been a really big Calvin Ridley fan. I like that he's connected now to Trevor Lawrence. I do like Christian Kirk, and I think there's enough for both of them to be really fantasy viable this year. But Ridley was always a guy that, really stuck out at me. I really always kind of have a little bias towards the really good route runners, and I think that's Calvin Ridley. So I kind of like that. I think Jacksonville's offense and Trevor Lawrence are kind of set to, be maybe one of the more explosive offenses this year if Lawrence takes that next step. So I'm going to take Calvin Ridley again. He's a little older than people realize. He came into the league later. I think he's like 27 or maybe even 28. So he's a little bit older than I think what people might think, but we haven't really seen him for 2 years. So I think people forget that he's already there, but I don't think at 28 that's a big deal for a wide receiver. Again, if you're thinking about that like 2-3 year window, I think he could be potentially outplay this draft slot, to be honest with you, because of his upside. That people are a little bit concerned, even though in redraft it doesn't sound, from what's out there, it doesn't sound like people are too concerned anymore in redraft.
All right, so we saw a George Kittle, who is not old, people think he's old. He's not old. It's a good pick there. Michael Pittman, that's a little bit of a heartbreaker. I'd like to see him last longer. I love Michael Pittman. I think he's been woefully underserved by the Colts, who've had a different starting quarterback 8 seasons in a row for week 1. How's that? How's that for franchise stability? That's great. And then Aaron Jones goes, and so we're back to you. I think you are a receiver and a tight end short of a full starting lineup and then a flex. Does this, especially in a dynasty, is that entering your thought process? Are you entirely about just if someone stands out like a sore thumb, you don't care about position here in the mid rounds?
Yeah, right now, I think I would say I'm not overly concerned about making sure, I fill out the slot, especially at the tight end position, because I think once you get past the handful of elite guys, I'd rather I'd rather wait and fill out, some bench spots. I'm actually going to pivot. I talked before that I like some of the second-year wide receivers more than even the rookie wide receivers. And this is a guy that I was a fan of big time when he was coming out last year. I think he's set to maybe push Terry McLaurin to be a 1A, 1B situation there. And if he actually super oversees Terry McLaurin as being the lead guy there, I wouldn't be surprised. That's how much I believe in the talent. So I'm taking Jahan Dotson, second-year player. Like I said, I like him more than some of the other guys, Addison and those guys. So that's where I'm going.
All right, and then Pickens goes right after, because I was going to say, when you said second year, I thought, oh, maybe this is Pickens. But as I recall, you weren't a huge fan of Pickens last year.
Yeah, I like them. I just had, similar to Quentin Johnson, I had some question marks. And again, I think it's just in my scouting and evaluating, I tend to look for the separators and the route running guys. And I think Dotson was a guy that some people want him to peg as only an inside guy, and I always thought he had the versatility to be a guy who can go inside, outside. I think we're kind of seeing that. So that's just a slight, preference in terms of how I evaluate the wide receiver position.
I didn't like Pickens on film that much last year. Obviously, the hands are spectacular, and there's a lot of memes going around on social media saying, certain commentators calling him more talented than Justin Jefferson. Okay, buddy, interesting hill to die on. I don't think that's true. I like Deontay Johnson better there, but we're not in Deontay Johnson territory yet for drafting, for me anyway. Anthony Richardson made it all the way back to me. It does start to feel like dumb not to take a chance on the upside where taking, a 6th round pick in any draft isn't going to be the make or break. It's probably going to mean that I'm going to wind up taking as 2 quarterbacks, and that's going to annoy me, but I am going to take Anthony Richardson. So you mentioned him briefly. Your eval on Anthony Richardson, more than briefly, you get like any fuller thoughts. I mean, you were talking about relative value wise. It's just when a kid has this much raw athletic ability, at some point you go, it's worth taking the shot that he sorts it out.
Yeah, that's really what it comes down to. I think, he's a guy that could put it together. I think even early career, his size and athleticism capability is going to remind some people of Cam Newton. And I think, Cam Newton wasn't the most natural thrower at all. And I think that's what we're going to see early on in Anthony Richardson, and then see how that can kind of evolve. And I think it's one of those things where if it's just average, he's probably still a QB1. And if it develops into being a good passer, it's probably like quarterback like 6, 7, 8 because of the rushing. And if the passing really develops, then you're probably talking about like in the mix of being like a top 3, top 4 guy. So I think he seems like he wouldn't be safe for fantasy, but I think he does offer a level of floor, because I think you're going to get the cheat code pretty regularly, and then you just add the passing onto that. You're probably going to get QB1 no matter how bad it goes, unless he like loses the job or whatever. And I don't think we're looking at a Trey Lance situation, just different type of spectrums and organizations. So there's only one other quarterback that I would have been in the mix for me, would have been Kyler Murray, but you don't really know what you're getting this year, so there's question marks there. And then Deshaun Watson was the other one that would have been in the mix, for me to consider if I was in your situation. And he's another one. Is he ever going to get back to the Deshaun Watson that we saw a couple years ago? I think it's a legitimate question that we don't have an answer for. And I think a lot of people think he's just going to flip the switch this year and get back to that level. I'm a little bit more gun shy in terms of, and hesitant that that's going to just naturally happen.
All right, back to me again. We saw 2 tight ends go off the board. I'm heartbroken because I was so definitely going to take... Oh, wait, no. I agree with your philosophy, which is that if you're going to pass on the first couple, there's just no reason. That's not a great position, and especially in a startup. I'd rather not be married to any of these so-so tight ends for a long period of time. Who am I thinking here? I don't think I can make myself do Jameson Williams. I'm tempted. Just because of I feel like I'm still in starter territory, and I probably can't make myself do it. So I actually am going to go Deontay. I just believe in him. I think it's going to get better. But if we look back on that pick there, Jameson Williams still didn't go. So I'm interested to see if he's your pick here, and if not, if you'd been faced with the choice of Jameson where I took him, where I feel like I needed a receiver, what would your instinct have been?
Yeah, so I do have Jameson Williams right. I have Jahan Dotson, followed by George Pickens, followed by Jameson Williams. Okay. All ahead of Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers, and Quentin Johnston. And then I have Marquise Brown, which is, I see him up in the queue there, so I mention him. Yeah, I have them all one after another in terms of it. I have Deontay Johnson very slightly ahead, just because I think, again, I think what you're getting. I do think he loses a little bit of value in half PPR instead of full PPR. But I think it's more of one of those things. The upside is Jameson Williams. I think the safer floor is a guy like Deontay Johnson. I am going to take Jameson Williams here, just because he was a guy that he was my number 2 wide receiver last year coming out. I did really, really like him. I know we haven't seen anything from him really, so it's hard to get a thing. And then even this year, I know with the suspension and stuff to start the year. But I think he could be a guy that if he would have played last year, he might have been a guy that would have been way higher on this in this draft and in Dynasty wide receiver ranks. So I'm going to stick to just my pre-draft eval last year that I thought he could be a big time player and difference maker at the next level.
That was a rub it in Harris's face pick. That was a you may have done the wrong thing there, which I may have, because you have a much better sense of Jameson Williams than I do. Marquise Brown, who you did mention, went right before you, and Deshaun Watson, who you also mentioned as being kind of on that last remaining tier in his tier among quarterbacks. He's also gone, but you have a quarterback. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, I'm going to actually. I know I mentioned it before, and if there's one guy wasn't here, I would have continued to wait. But again, thinking that shorter window, especially at the tight end position, because I think the tight end position ebbs and flows even more so than we want to admit. Besides the elite guys, I do think Darren Waller is set up to have some success in New York. Whether you want to call it a little homer bias pick here, I just think that I believe in the coaches with the Giants, that they know how to put people in a right position to succeed. The Giants wide receivers are still obviously very questionable still in terms of how good they could be. I think Darren Waller's in for a really strong year. And if I get a top 5, top 6 tight end, even in 1 year, I think they might be worth it here just to have a difference maker.
With that accent, you're a Giant fan? I never would have put those two things together. It just seems.
So I'm going to say that I think Waller could have a 2-year window here where he could still produce pretty high level, mid tight end 1 or even push to be in the top 5. I think now in redraft his value is starting to move up a little bit, because I always thought he should have been in that like 4-5 range of the tight end positions, and for a while he was going a little bit further back. But I do think he's set up here if he stays healthy. Obviously, that's a big caveat with Darren Waller.
Yeah, that's why if there's doubts about him, that's it. Maybe one full season in his career, I believe. So we're at the point in the draft. We're past the halfway point. We're doing 14 rounds here, but no kickers, no defenses. So legitimately the halfway point. And we're to the point where you can kind of, in my mind, when I'm doing these startups, it's one of two things. You can take flyers on what still are relatively highly touted rookies, or you can really forget it's a dynasty and try to win this year. Just pick up guys who you acknowledge, I'm only going to have them for a year or two, and then I'm going to have to find other solutions. But this league will have rookie drafts for the next however many years, and so I will have a pipeline for replenishing. So it can actually bring you to cross purposes where someone like David Montgomery can go alongside someone like Kendre Miller. Someone who feels like they have their NFL career ahead of them, as opposed to somebody who feels like, it's good luck, David. You got a year or two left at your rushing style. And I don't think either one's right or either one's wrong. It kind of depends on what you feel like you've done on your team to this point. I feel like I've gone pretty veteran heavy, relatively speaking. So I remember your eval of Kendre Miller. You liked him, and so I'm going to take Kendre Miller. Am I right about that? About your eval of Kendre Miller? I don't think you loved him, but you liked him.
Yeah, I liked him. I think he's a guy who could be a part. I think he could be a lead part of a committee backfield. I like that I think he's got 3 down capabilities. So that's a part of the game. And I think he's a guy that, he could easily develop into like a mid RB2 in fantasy if he was given the work, the work share and the opportunity. So yes, I like the pick of Kendre Miller there. Okay,
cool. Phew. Picking rookies is stressful around you, man. You know what you're talking about, and I kind of don't. So am I continuing to shoot with the really young guys? Yeah, I don't think so. I don't have an obvious young guy that I love, and so I'm going to pick someone who's young, but he's just on all my teams. So people watching are like, if he doesn't take Khalil Herbert, then what are we even doing here? I mean, he's young. It's his 3rd year. I just think he's spectacularly talented, and I'll take a shot on him. I'll take a shot on him in all formats. Maybe he's not even on the Bears in a couple years. Maybe he's not in the league in a couple years, but I'm taking a shot.
Yeah, listen, Herbert was a guy that I was a fan of when he was coming out of college. I know Matt Waldman was a big fan when he was coming out of college, and when he got an opportunity, he really showed something. There was like that I think it might have been like a 2 or 3 week window, right, where he really shined. And now, listen. yeah, it's going to be interesting to kind of see, what the new front office and stuff believes in him. Do they give him a real shot? Like, some teams are very hesitant if they don't invest in the guy to give them that opportunity. Some people, I saw it firsthand with the Giants last year. They're much more open to seeing what they have in the players that are here. I think if Herbert gets a real opportunity, he could be a real, impactful player at the next level. I've always been a fan of his rushing capabilities. So I kind of get that pick there, because I do think he's a guy that offers some upside, that there could be a lot more there than we haven't seen before, but people are hesitant, understandably so, because of the situation.
All right. So we've seen Rashee Rice go, which most of my draft friends are not huge Rashee Rice fans, so I don't think that one broke your heart. We saw A.J. Dillon go. What are you thinking here in the 9th round?
So I think I'm going to go to the wide receiver position and take a guy that, I really liked coming out of the draft. He showed glimpses his rookie year with the Jets. Then things kind of fell out of favor, and then they shipped him off to Cleveland. I think Elijah Moore is in for a bounce back year this year in Cleveland if Deshaun Watson, can get the job done. He's another one of those guys that I don't think there's this massive talent gap between a guy like Elijah Moore and the guys who were taken in the first round this year. I don't think their ceilings are that much different. It's just that those guys are the new toys, and Elijah Moore a couple years ago, and then kind of fell out of favor with the team that drafted him. So I'm taking Elijah Moore here.
It's the 9th round, so I'm not allowed to get mad at you or anything like that. It's late. I mean, we're late here. But I'll just tell you right now, this is your last chance with Elijah Moore, all right? You're never allowed to come on my show and recommend Elijah Moore again if he doesn't do it this year, because it's been a lot of years. But no, it's 9th round. It's great. This is the spot where you realize you're marrying these guys for more than just 1 year. For me, like, if I get one good year out of my 10th round pick in a Dynasty fantasy draft, rock on, you did your job. But if you can find a dude who you can get in the 9th or 10th round who you've actually always liked and thought he hasn't broken out yet, of course you do it. So I kid because I care. What are you thinking next?
So next up, I think at this point now we're just looking at guys that, like almost like high upside. I have more that approach once I get to here. So I'm actually going to go to the running back position, and I'm going to take my favorite rookie running back that's left, and that's Tyjae Spears out of Tennessee.
You've convinced me. Matt has convinced me. When Matt says, "Oh yeah, his upside is Jamal Charles," my jaw goes.
Yeah, Spears is just a guy that I think, like, there was some concerns pre-draft about his long-term, and maybe that's rightfully so. But again, like, in 4 or 5 years, if he has knee issues in 4 or 5 years, I'm not worried about 4 or 5 years. I'm not sure Derrick Henry is going to be in Tennessee for more than this year. Right. If the wheels really spin off, I could even see him being a guy that maybe is dangled around the trade deadline if they're really bad this year. They always seem to outplay their expectations, so it probably won't be the case. But I could easily see next year him being the lead guy in Tennessee. And even now, maybe they say, oh, Derrick Henry is this age. Maybe it is time to finally at least get another guy involved. He's the best, cohort that Derrick Henry's ever had there, and he's got really good receiving capabilities. He's a home run threat. He doesn't need a massive workload to make an impact. So at this point, to me, he's the highest upside running back pick left. I only had 2 running backs up to this point, so that's what led me towards Spears.
He's the one who doesn't have an ACL, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So the feeling is that's why he fell on draft boards. The feeling is what if? And I was on Waldman's show last week. It all blends together. I think it was last week, and he rattled through like 3 or 4 pros who never had. Did Hines Ward maybe never have an ACL? Like he mentioned a bunch of guys. He's like, yeah. Sometimes it's not good. Sometimes it is good. And it's a risk factor. And I understand why NFL teams might not want to take it, but that's not your problem in fantasy when you're picking in the 10th round. So that was a heartbreaker. I would have taken him. I'm a little flustered, a little shaken up. I'll take another rookie so you can talk about him. I don't think I've asked you about Marvin Mims, but I'm going to take him ahead of someone like Josh Downs. I know little, but very quick and very productive in college. What's your Mims take? Yeah,
I think Mims has got inside-outside versatility, and I think that's one of the things I like about him. a lot of this draft class that just got drafted, a lot of the players are, I think, slot only or best in the slot. I do think he's got the athleticism and the vertical capabilities to win on the outside, similar to what I was saying about Jahan Dotson. So I really like Mims. I think, once Caleb Williams transferred out of Oklahoma, I think that hurt Marvin Mims, and a little bit people maybe started to get down on him. He would have been the guy. He's been the guy that's been well known in like the Devi community and stuff. So I like the pick. I think, I think it speaks volumes that Sean Payton in his first ever move for the Broncos. I know that gets into a little bit, but he did aggressively move up to get him. There's a lot of uncertainty besides Jerry Jeudy there. I've never, I don't think they're very high on Cortland Sutton. I don't think he's there for too much longer. So I think Mims offers more upside than a guy like Josh Downs. I think Josh Downs might be a little safer, but in a half PPR, I'd rather shoot for the upside of a guy who can play on the outside and be more of a vertical threat than a guy like Josh Downs.
So my strategic thinking at this point is that I know I need a tight end, obviously, and I'm going to feel like I need another quarterback. So I have two potential bullets to fire at wide receiver and running back, and I don't feel pressure to take the tight end or the quarterback yet. So these next two picks probably will not be those, and then at the end. So I'm just telling you out loud, so you can totally screw me later in this draft. But so I'm gonna not do these. I'm gonna not do this. I'm just gonna keep firing. And I've taken Khalil Herbert. So let's just see whether Rashawn Johnson is anything. It's funny when I watch Rashawn Johnson in uniform, I'm like, hey, there's Deontay Foreman. I feel like they're kind of the same guy, which eventually Deontay Foreman won't be there. And also I got both Bijan and Roschon Johnson, so hook 'em. What's your Roschon Johnson take?
Yeah, I think he's a guy who's pretty good at everything, but not great or elite at anything. So I think he's a guy like slightly better version of Samaje Perine. Coaches are really going to like him. He can get the job done. Could he be Dameon Pierce if he got Dameon Pierce's workload? Yeah, I think he could be Dameon Pierce. I don't think the skill sets were all that different coming out of college. I think Dameon Pierce is a little bit more physical, but Roschon Johnson is not like a smaller back. He's a pretty bigger back too. Yeah. So I think he could be that kind of guy if he got. I mean, Dameon Pierce got a ridiculous workload last year. If for some reason Khalil Herbert fell out of favor and the Bears wanted to give Roschon Johnson that workload, I think he could be a Dameon Pierce-like player. I obviously with Justin Fields there rushing, I don't think we're looking at the same type of volume or upside as Dameon Pierce, but I think he's a similar genre of runner.
All right. Well, I'm going to be okay with that. With again, I think the reason I've gone young here, Mims and Roschon being the last two examples, is just because I did feel like after Bijan, these are I have a much more veteran team than you would typically think, and so I'm shooting for some young upside here in the late middle rounds. We've gotten through down to you. Josh Downs did go. I certainly considered Sky Moore at that most recent pick because he didn't do a lot last year. It was hurt a lot last year, but it's the situation of all situations, and I know some evaluations are pretty positive on him. So he's gone. Where are you leaning for your 11?
Yeah, so, you mentioned pivoting away from quarterback and tight end. I look at the board, and for me, the most intrigue left is quarterback and tight end.
Yeah,
that's
pretend I didn't say that. That was an internal monologue. What are you even doing to me over here?
So that's where I'm going to go, and I'm gonna go quarterback first here, and I'm gonna stay. I'm going to stay the local pick, and I again buying into the Giants coaching staff and where I think they could go this year. I'm going to take Daniel Jones. He at least adds the running component like Justin Fields, who's my starter. I get that out of him and hope that one of these guys passing could continue to develop to be a little bit safer than just relying on their running capabilities, and hope that one of them really put the passing together to be the more complete player that we haven't seen yet from either one of them.
Great news, everybody. That was never going to be the quarterback I was going to take. We're all okay. My external monologue worked out fine. And what tight end are you going to screw up here?
So I came on your show to do the tight end show, and I told you that this was my favorite tight end in the class.
You did.
And I'm gonna stay on brand.
Okay.
And I'm gonna take Luke Musgrave out of Green Bay. I know everyone's in on Kincaid and Laporta and Michael Mayer, but Musgrave was my number one tight end in this class. The total package, where if we fast forward 3 years and say who could be in that genre of Kittle and Andrews and Hawkinson in terms of the most upside, I think Musgrave is the rookie that I think offers the most upside as the complete player. He's the only one of the pass catchers that I think could really play in line too. And so I'm gonna stick with that. I don't love the fact that around after they drafted him in the NFL draft, they took another tight end. That is a little cause for concern because I think it really opens it up. But for now, I'm gonna stick to he was my favorite tight end coming out, and he's going way beyond where the other ones obviously went. If we would have to scroll up a while to find Kincaid and Michael Mayer and Sam Laporta. So I'll take him there, thinking that he could be just as good, if not better, than those guys.
So where we are in the draft, frankly, we can justify just about anything, but I can say that under normal circumstances, even in a dynasty draft, I'm not usually going to take two quarterbacks, and I'm really not usually going to take two tight ends, because again, you've said it. Like, I feel like there are so many solutions in the waiver wire. I hopeful. In my case, I'm going to have to take a second quarterback because of Anthony Richardson. This is a long way of me getting to a question. Do you feel different? I know in a redraft, I'm sure you're not racing out to take a second quarterback and often a second tight end. In Dynasty, do you feel personally more compelled to do two of each?
Yeah, I think I do in a dynasty setting. I think in a redraft, I always want to go, like you said, go one and then try to stockpile like upside running back stashes. But I think in a situation where a dynasty, like if you take a guy like I took Darren Waller a little bit on the older side. I like the idea of combining them with maybe a young upside lottery ticket at the tight end position like Luke Musgrave. If my quarterback, if I got like a Mahomes or an Allen or Herbert or Burrow, probably I'm not taking. And I put Fields a little bit behind them. There's still some question marks. So that would lead me to, if it wasn't one of those elite guys, I probably would take a second guy. If I took a guy like you took Anthony Richardson, then I personally would probably want to try to put a solid older veteran in the mix with him. That would be kind of my philosophy. So I would kind of let my first quarterback decision dictate whether or not I took a second one and what type of second one. Agreed.
All right. Well, since my internal monologue went external and you cheated, I'll take Chigakonkwo as my in redraft like tight end 10. He's fine. He's fine, everybody. It'll work out fine. I'm trading for Luke Musgrave very early in the season. And now we're back around to me after 6 more receivers have gone. Adam Thielen goes. That's an optimistic. But honestly, like, I'm not mad that in the 13th round of a 12-team draft, Adam Thielen goes, because that bot is saying, I don't care, man. I'm just going to use him this year, and I'll draft somebody in the rookie draft. It's fine. Like, I kid, but it's fine. Like, we're at the point now where I do think you're either solely focused on future or solely focused on maybe this guy accidentally trips in the end zone 7 times and wins me the league this year. So all good there. Who do I want to get? I think I'm not going to take any chances with you, Joker. Yeah, I'm not going to take any chances. Maybe not just with you, Joker, with some other Jokers too. I'll take Kirk Cousins to pair with Anthony Richardson. It's the perfect kind of guy. And it's funny because Jordan Love goes right after me, and that's the exact opposite strategy, but I like that pick too. It's just that I took Richardson, so I'm not going to take Love also, of course. So, okay, where Geno Smith goes, your third quarterback is waiting for you. I'm sure you're going to do it. What do you got here?
No, so I'm going to pivot to the wide receiver position, and I see a guy who was from this year's rookie class that I really was intrigued by. He fell, because of size concerns, but
yeah,
it's
5'6".
Tank Dell. Yeah, he's really small, but it's going to be interesting because I saw a lot of people comp him to like Hollywood Brown in the pre-draft process. I really do think like Josh Downs, I think, is a slot only, and I like Josh Downs. But Tank Dell, while he's smaller than Josh Downs, his quickness ability, I think, can handle some outside work as well. So I'm going to be intrigued by him and see if the CJ Stroud Tank Dell connection could actually materialize into something. So here, he'll be the guy I take an upside flyer on here late.
2 words. Tutu Atwell. You can't play in the NFL at 5'6". I love you, Tank, but you're not a tank. All right, we're at your very last pick. Matt Waldman's special, Zach Evans, goes the pick right before you. He loves Zach Evans. So what are you doing this last pick? I don't think you have a need. You don't have to do anything in particular. You're just going to take the next guy that you like on your board.
Yeah, I'm gonna take a flyer here on Jaylen Warren.
That's who I would have taken. I had my eye
I'm
on him.
not. Yeah, I'm not a huge Najee Harris fan.
Me
I
neither.
understand he's still going to get the deference because first round draft capital,
This
all
year.
that stuff.
Yeah.
But Jaylen Warren is a guy that was intriguing when he came out. I think he was either late or even a UDFA. He intrigued me coming out, and the glimpses that we've seen have been intriguing. And it's more of just I'm not really buying that Najee is going to be this impactful runner. I know he's had some successful years, so give me the flyer on Jaylen Warren just in case at some point they are willing to make it a more of a merit base and not just draft capital base in terms of what their running back depth chart looks like.
I mean, it's a dynasty year. Najee's rookie deal is going to run out, and the Steelers probably won't sign him because he's not going to be worth the money that he's used to as a first round pick. So Jalen was as good a player last year, I think. So I certainly had my eyes on him as my last pick. I see a prospect who we all think is a really great athlete who's blocked right now at tight end, and I'll just wait. I'm fine waiting until I need to release someone and get another player on waivers. But for the moment, I'll say Isaiah Likely, just to have a prospect in waiting there. And we made it, Mr. Irrelevant, Clyde Edwards-Helaire in a dynasty league. Who would have guessed just a year or two ago that the guy in redraft who was going number 9, let alone in dynasty? Do you remember in dynasty his rookie year was Edwards-Helaire like a top 3 pick?
He must have if he was going like top 7 to 9 in redraft leagues.
I don't remember specifically because I'm not sure we did this exercise that year, but yeah, I'm gonna guess. So Mr. Irrelevant. The Cajun Lawyer, CEH. So this was great. I hope the folks who love Dynasty enjoyed this. Hopefully give you some insight into the rookies because Paul knows what he's talking about, believe me, and also just overall kind of thoughts about draft strategy. We'd love to hear what you think of how the draft turned out and also kind of who your sleeper picks that you would like to get and rounds that you would expect to get them. Tell us down in the comments. We'd love to know about that. If you're not subscribed to the channel, it does help us out if you click the little subscribe button. You can even click the little bell, and that way you'll get a notification every time we do post a new video. I want to thank AG1 for sponsoring. Again, I'll remind you that I really do drink it every day, and I really do think it's worth checking out. It's not like a long-term commitment. You can try it once and see if it does anything for you. It would help out the channel. I want to thank Dave Pyper for producing because he's great, because this was a quick one to put together, and he did a wonderful job. And I especially want to thank Paul Perdichizzi and remind everybody to go to Saturday 2, the number 2, Sunday.com. The books for 2024 have just started coming out. This week is the first release, and they'll be updated a couple of times before the draft. Paul does a ton of work on them, and they are absolutely worth your time. Paul, thank you. I hope you had some fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys for having me. And you also get access my content at just the letter S, the number 2, the letter S, and then football.com as well. So S football, or you can spell it all out as well.
All right. So everybody should check that out. For Paul, for Dave, I'm Chris. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Thanks so much for watching. Please, please, please smash that like button. Write a comment. Tell us who else you'd like to see us review film on. And of course, best of all, please subscribe to our channel and then click that little bell above the subscribe button, and you'll be notified whenever we post a new video.